Today I'll be putting Kings Island's and Cedar Point's roller coasters on a tier list. So we got the best of the best, the good, the amazing, the meh, and the terrible. So let's get right in. Coming in at the best of the best is Diamondback. This ride is awesome. This ride's got some great floater airtime. So this ride's got some really good camelbacks. It's got a odd drop off the mid-course, underrated, but the mid-course kind of slowed down the ride. The splashdown's really good. The drop is really good. And you get some nice sustained floater airtime throughout the ride. So this ride is my second favorite coaster at Kings Island. This ride is just flat out amazing. And it's also my 10th favorite roller coaster overall. Coming in an amazing tier, which is my favorite coaster at Kings Island, Mystic Timbers, the park's GCI wooden roller coaster. This ride is really good. So this ride starts off with a good twisted first drop like on other GCIs. A lot of other GCIs have a good twisted first drop. These drops are always really good. And then you get some nice airtime throughout the out and back layout. I prefer the out and back layout to the twister layout on GCIs. You do get more airtime on Mystic Timbers than any other GCI I've ridden. So this is a great wooden roller coaster. It's not too rough. It's actually pretty smooth, but it's still got a bite to it that makes it a great wooden roller coaster. In Vertigo will go in the meh tier. I have not ridden this ride, so it's the only coaster I missed out on at Kings Island because it was closed. So the next ride is Adventure Express, which is going in good tier. This ride is a really good aero mine train. It's always a solid coaster to ride at Kings Island. This ride has way better layout. It's a little bit smoother than Cedar Creek Mine Ride. It's still got a little bit of a bite to it. It's got some nice theming, which I can appreciate. Which this ride is just way better than Cedar Creek Mine Ride. It's way better. It's just got a more interesting layout. Better scenery, in my opinion. Even though Cedar Creek Mine Ride does have some pretty good scenery, this ride has better scenery anyways. This ride's just super solid. Except the second lift hill is a little bit of a dead spot because you don't really have any other track except for the brake run after that second lift hill. So it is a little bit of a buzzkill, but it's still a better ride overall. And it's still a solid coaster at Kings Island. Banshee is going in amazing tier. This is a solid BMM invert, even though it's the weakest BMM invert I have ridden. So this is my least favorite BMM invert. It's probably not the best BMM invert. It's definitely the most graceful BMM invert I have ridden. But it's still a good one. It has the best first drop on invert. The inversions aren't as good as some of the other inverts I've ridden from the 90s. But this ride still has some decent intensity to this ride. The 0G roll offers some great hang time. The pretzel knot is really nice. It's nice and intense. It reminds me of a drawn out Batwing on the 90s BMM inverts brought into the modern day. And then you got a second vertical loop. This is alright. And then you got a slow inline twist, which is all the best version on the ride. Great hang time, and overall a solid ride. Corkscrew is going in the meh tier. This is just an okay aero looper. It doesn't really do that much for me. So this ride's just kind of okay. A lot of people put it in their top 10 worst roller coasters, but I don't really think it's really that bad. But it's not a good ride, do I say? But it's not bad, but it's not that good. It's just kind of okay. The corkscrews are kind of uncomfortable, but they're not the worst. This ride's just kind of okay. Creek is going in good tier. This is a solid one roller coaster. Cedar Creek Mine Ride's going in mad tier. This ride is not that good. I don't really like it. So you go down a couple drops on the pre-lift over here. They're kind of rough and uncomfortable. They like really slam you to the side really hard. And then you get this turn over the water, which is actually really nice due to the scenery. But if this turn wasn't on the water, it wouldn't be that good. Then you go into an upward helix into the second lift hill. This second lift hill does more, but the ride's just 1,000 times rougher than Adventure Express. So this lift hill is alright. And then you go into a couple turns, a helix that really is really bad, one really bad transition. It's an old coaster, so it makes sense. This ride's really not that good. Gemini, the park's racing coaster, is going in good tier. This is a solid racing coaster. Gemini is the park's racing hybrid coaster. Not to get confused with Steel Vengeance, this is not a true wooden roller coaster. The first drop is solid. The turnaround gives some nice view of the front of the park. You've got a nice racing feature. You've got some great airtime pops. This is an underrated coaster that does not get talked about enough. This ride is just great. It is really good. It's pretty solid. Going in amazing tier is Raptor, the park's BMM invert. So this ride is better than Banshee. This ride is really intense. It's got some high positive G's, a great vertical loop, followed by a good 0G roll, which whips you really hard. Then the Cobra roll is really snappy. It's really good. Usually I'm not a Cobra roll fan, but this is a good Cobra roll right here. And then you take a turn up into the mid-course, which slows down the ride considerably. Which this ride wouldn't be better without a mid-course brake run. That's because there's also a clone in France that doesn't run with the trim brakes, which I hope to ride one day. So then you go into some corkscrews, which are really good. Then you got this helix, which makes your feet go numb. It's really intense. It's a great out moment. Coming in good tier is Rougarou, the park's BMM floorless coaster. This is a solid ride. This ride is underrated. This is a solid BMM floorless coaster. This ride's got some great intensity, some good inversions. It's overall a really good ride. A lot of people don't talk about this ride enough. A lot of the people that do really hate this coaster because they do not know how to ride it, which is kind of surprising because they like other old school BMMs like Kumba and the Hulk and Montu, and they don't like this one because they somehow complain how rough it is. It's really not that bad if you keep your head forward, just like the old school BMMs I just mentioned. Going in the good tier is Valraven, the park's BMM dive coaster, which is kind of just okay. This ride's really not that good. It's just kind of bland. It doesn't really do much for me, so it's just kind of okay. Wicked Twister is going in math tier. I have not ridden it, so I do not know. So I can't really judge this one. So I'm just going to put it there for now. Off-Road Dragster is going in amazing tier. This ride has a great 120 mile per hour launch into the 420 foot top hat. This ride actually only goes 112. 120 miles an hour is only the advertising, not the actual top speed. Either way, this ride is still really good. So this ride has one of the best launches I've ever experienced, with the open T-bar restraints found on Millennium Force or Expedition G-Force, the other infinite mega coasters out there. So this ride has a great launch. You get some great positive G's going up into the top hat. The drop's kind of okay. This ride is really good. Gatekeeper, the park's BMM wing coaster is going in the good tier. This ride's probably more scenic than it is of a ride experience. So this ride is still good. It's got a good near miss with the keyholes, so it's still a solid ride. Iron Dragon, which is going in meh tier. This ride is just kind of boring. It doesn't really do anything for me personally, unlike the other aero suspended coasters like the Bat at Kings Island and Vortex at Canada's Wonderland. This ride just kind of has a slow and boring layout. It's not as extreme as the Bat or Vortex, and it's not as good. Backlot stunt coaster is going in meh tier. It's kind of okay. It has a solid launch into a triple helix upwards, which is fine. It's got some great positive G's, but the rest of the ride is kind of just meh. The rest of the ride doesn't really do much for me, even with the effects working, like at Kings Island, which is the version we're talking about here. This ride's just kind of okay. Of Fear, Kings Island's indoor premier ride spaghetti bowl coaster. This was the first river roller coaster to use LIMs. This is an indoor version. This ride is pretty darn rough. It's not that good. It's kind of rough, but the layout is pretty good. It's pretty intense being in the dark. Even though you might be able to see the track sometimes, it's still a pretty good ride, even if it's a little rough. Ryan, the park's BMM Giga Coaster, is going in the very best tier. This is a really good Giga Coaster. Even though it's not one of my favorites, it's still a great ride, personally. This is a pretty good ride. I know it gets hate on a lot, but it is a pretty underrated ride. I just wish it was a little bit longer, and there were more low to the ground elements. Magnum XL 200, the world's first hyper coaster, is going in good tier. This ride's not really my favorite. I don't really like the finale or anything because it really hurts. But the ride's still alright. It's not bad, but it's definitely not my favorite coaster in the world. But it's still kind of just alright. But it's still not a bad ride. It's kind of good, but not in the best way possible. Like that you get so much pie paint. Going in the amazing tier is the Beast, the park's wooden roller coaster. This is the world's longest wooden roller coaster, and it's an underrated ride. This ride's pretty good. I actually really like the Beast. A lot of people hate on the Beast, but I actually like it. It's been really smooth recently, and this has been a really good roller coaster recently, so I really like this ride. Coming in at good tier is the Racer. So just like the Beast, Gravity Group has been doing a good job on this roller coaster, and it's been running pretty smooth. It's got some great airtime, some a cool racing feature. This ride's got a little bit of a bite to it, still with the Gravity Group pre-cut track, but it's still a really solid ride. I feel like this ride's underrated, just like the Beast. It doesn't get talked about enough, and it's a pretty good ride. Steel Vengeance is going in the very best tier. This is my number 3 coaster overall, and my number 1 at Cedar Point. So this ride is pretty good. It's just a little repetitive personally, but other than that, this ride is really good. It's also really good when you can get a trimless ride on this roller coaster, because they do run the trims now, but every once in a while you can probably get a trimless ride. I usually don't, but I have once and it's pretty good. So that's a really good ride. Bad. This is the park's aero suspended coaster, and this is 1,000 times better than Iron Dragon. It has better intensity, it's got better swinging, it's way shorter of a ride, but it is a way better ride than Iron Dragon, because it has more quality in its ride time than Iron Dragon. Going in meh tier is Woodstock Express. This ride's just kind of okay. It doesn't really do much for me. I don't really like it. It's just kind of average. It's not really meant for me anyways, so it's gonna go in meh tier. Brick is going in the very best tier. This is a great ride. It is my 4th favorite roller coaster. This ride's got some really good low to the ground snappy transitions, a great second launch, a great first drop. It is overall a really good ride. It had some great pacing. It is really good. So this ride's great.
Welcome back, everybody. How was your ride?